Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Hewitt, and I am the Club Growth Director for District 3 Toastmasters, aztoastmasters.org. I'm really excited tonight because we have an amazing guest presenter. One of the things that is coming up more and more, not only with Pathways having projects to do with this, Pathways is our educational program, if you did not know. But a lot of people are embracing this new form of media, and that is podcasts. I know personally, I have several that I subscribe to and listen to on a regular basis. It's a great way to get an influx of knowledge without having to sit, watch videos, read books, and you can listen to them in the car or wherever you go. A couple of years ago, a certain gentleman approached our district and said, we should share some stories. And what better way to do it than in a podcast? And Grand Canyon Echoes was born. That amazing gentleman is Don Griffith. He's DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster, and a past international director. So he's a big cheese, just saying. He's a gentleman that I admire and respect a great deal. Not only is he very knowledgeable, but he's always willing to share that knowledge and help other people grow. So tonight, we are going to turn it over to Don as he takes us on an amazing adventure of how to get started in your own podcasting journey. So grab your pen, paper, take notes, and we have an amazing Q&A section at the bottom of your screen where you can ask questions, and at times when Don says, is there any questions? I will feed those questions to him for him to do the very best that he can with those. Don, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that introduction, and for everybody online who's come to learn something about podcasts. This session is going to be an introduction. We're going to hint at complexities that you can follow through with later with your own research. But today I want to give you the essential steps for understanding what we're going to be doing. We have an agenda. We're going to talk about just what is a podcast. Most people have heard about it. Not everybody is real clear on what it is. Who is listening to those podcasts, and what kinds of podcasts are there? It turns out there's a whole bunch of different types. What kind of equipment do you need? Is it complicated? Is it expensive? After you've got your recording, what kind of editing software do you use? After you've edited it, how do you get your great podcast on the internet? We'll review all of that at the end. There'll be a Q&A section at the end, but if you've got a question along the way, Karen will be receiving those in the Q&A section, and I give her permission to interrupt at an appropriate point to ask that question. So let's get going. It's a simple question. What's a podcast? It turns out that it's a pretty simple answer. Podcasts are audio files that you can find on the internet, download, and play. And you can play them on your computer. You can listen to them on your phone, your smart pad. It's a portable way to listen to great audio content. And if you're not sure what's out there on a podcast, just Google your subject. You'll find there is probably a podcast for everything that you're interested in, and a whole bunch of things that you didn't realize you were interested in until you saw that podcast. So it's audio files that you can listen to anywhere, anytime. And I want to emphasize it's listening. Yes, there are a lot of visual mediums out there. There is video, there are vlogs, there are all kinds of things where you can watch. And for so much material, seeing images is very powerful. But a podcast, the beauty of it is so portable. You put it on your phone and you play it wherever you are. Maybe you're on a hike. and you've got this podcast stored on your phone. And as you're hiking through this lovely canyon, you can listen. There's a lot of great people listening to podcasts, too. According to Matt King, as a reporter in New York, the average listener is young, well-off, educated, full-time employed, and they're adept using social media. If that's a kind of audience that you would like to reach, keep listening, because we'll show you how to get to them. Now, who is listening? There are a lot of statistics out there. You can get statistics on anything, especially on podcasts. What kind of age of people? It turns out 93% of listeners are adults, 18 to 55 plus. This is the audience that we in Toastmasters certainly want to reach. If this is a Toastmaster-related podcast idea that you have, this is the audience you want. In the United States, it's estimated that 40% of the population, that's a lot, that's like 150 million people, have listened to at least one podcast. That's pretty good penetration. This statistic about men and women is, I've seen different numbers, but it's approximately equal. Approximately the same number of men and women will be podcast listeners. The one that struck me, though, was that 85% of podcast listeners have gone to college. Again, an important demographic for your message. Now, I said earlier that there are lots of topics. You can go out and Google a topic. What kinds of podcasts are there anyway? Well, among the 850,000 estimated podcasts out there, some people have boiled it down into 8 types. One is the interview style, and this is the one that I've used for the District podcast, where I am a host and I have a guest or two, and I will ask questions and we'll just have a back and forth. It's easygoing conversational style. But you can also have one, it's just a conversation, period. It's not a style. It's just two people talking. You record it, you edit it, and you put it up on the air. Sometimes you're a solo. You have a message you want to give. You have an important message that you want to spell out, and there's nobody else involved. That's the monologue style. Many of the podcasts are storytelling, and that story might be a fictional story, or it might be some kind of expose or perhaps an investigation. But they're telling a story, there's facts, there's figures, there's evidence. One kind of podcast you will run into is a roundtable. And this is kind of like a panel discussion in a way, but you have a group of people and they're all on mic and they just go back and forth on a topic. Those can be a lot of fun and very informative when you get multiple people with different perspectives. The theatrical kind of podcast is sometimes very theatrical. That is, there may be a group of people putting on essentially call it a radio play, for lack of a better word. I like to use the recorded theatrical things. One of my hobbies is to use podcasts to listen to old-time radio. There are literally tens of thousands of old radio broadcasts from the 30s, 40s, and 50s that are now available for free on podcasts. And yes, they're old-fashioned and yes, they're cheesy, but they are very entertaining to me. And I am glad they're out there. The next one, the repurposed content, really kind of gets to if you already have some content. Let's say you have a blog. What if you were to recite those blogs into a recording? Read your blogs, record it, and then put that reading up on your podcast. You've taken your content and you've put it in a different place. You've put it in a different format, and now you're reaching more people. And of course, the hybrid kind of covers everything. It could be a mix of these. It could be something completely different. But there are lots of styles. And I bet you if you really broke it down and went out and studied those 850,000 podcasts, you'd find even more categories. I think the point I'm trying to get is there is not only a subject that might appeal to you, but a method of talking about that subject that will work for you in your message. It is a portable format. You can listen to a podcast driving in your car, and you don't have to take your eyes off the road. You can be out on a run and listening to a podcast. And again, it could be anything. Or you could just find yourself a great location to relax and just use your smartphone to listen. So here you are. You have a great idea for a podcast, and you're wondering, what do I need to get started? That, of course, is really what you've been waiting for me to get to, I'm sure, is how do we get started? Well, let's start with, wait, how did I get onto Zoom? Well, that's because Zoom is a very easy way to do a podcast. Think about it. A year and a half ago, very few of us knew about Zoom or didn't have any experience with it. Now, certainly everybody in Toastmasters has not only been exposed to it, but in many cases mastered the virtual meeting. To make a podcast, you really don't care about the camera, of course. You could just turn off the camera if you don't want it and just record the audio. It's already built to record. You don't need any special thing. You just need for instance, what I'm using to talk to you today is the same kind of microphone and headphone setup that we could use to do a recording and call it a podcast. There's two caveats, though. Just like with Zoom and WebEx, you all have had experience with bad connections, either in your own end or trying to contact someone who's got a bad internet connection. That would be the downfall of a Zoom session for podcasting. However, we've gotten very good at fixing those kinds of things, either improving our cable connection, making sure we don't have other things in the house that are interfering. We already know the tricks to get the best connection. The last one is really easy, and Karen's already done it. I heard her say it. She said this meeting is being recorded. If you're using it to record the audio, make sure you actually hit the recording. But what if you want to do an in-person recording? You either don't want to deal with the internet and the dropouts, or you are done with social distancing and you're ready to meet someone in person and record. Or maybe you're doing it solo, but you want to do a better quality audio than you could get on Zoom. Well, your first line of defense is your computer. Your computer will be your central place. When you hook up your microphone to your computer, you can record, and there's software, and I'll talk about that software in a little while. Software that allows you to record and then later do the edits and then later do the posting onto the internet. So this is kind of an important element for podcasters. And a lot of people today have a computer, a laptop, SmartPad that would be good for this. I mentioned microphones. Using the built-in mic on cameras or laptops or computers isn't the best sound. I think we've all experienced that. So how do you get better sound? Well, you use an external microphone. The picture on the screen is just a generic picture, in my opinion. It's not intended to be a particular brand that you should go get. And if you've looked online for microphones, you've seen that there are dozens, hundreds of different options. I would go out there and study that, and you can do what I did earlier getting ready for this. I Googled best microphones for podcasters. You will get dozens of websites with lists of their favorites. Dig through those, make your selection, and then try it. These microphones aren't very expensive. Some are, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. You should also make sure you have some good headphones because you want to be able to hear clearly what's being recorded, and especially if it's in a little bit of a noisy area, you want to make sure that you know that there's some noise bleeding in. These three things, a computer, a microphone, and some headphones, would be all you'd need for just a solo kind of podcast, if it's just you talking. But if you want to have other people, each one of them would need some headphones. And if you have multiple people on headphones, you'd need a little bit of hardware. This is an inexpensive headphone amplifier. And what you would do, you could plug in 4 different sets of headphones, and they will all get the same signal from the main audio. And they can each set their own level to their own taste. And each person will need a microphone. Now, this is a picture of a mixer. There's a lot of different kinds, a lot of different brands. Some have 2 channels, some have 4 channels, some have 30 channels. Obviously, you'll need to go study this and look at the kind of microphone you have, the kind of computer connection you have, and go out and do that research. I'd love to spend the next hour on this page alone helping you figure out the best piece of kit for your podcast. But we don't have time for that, and that's really beyond the scale and the purpose. So again, the key things are a microphone and a computer, some headphones, and then if you have multiple headphones and microphones, you need some ways to route that signal, that audio signal, to and from the computer. Some people might be wondering what I use for my setup. As Karen mentioned, I am the podcast host for District 3's podcast, and we call it Grand Canyon Echoes. For that, I chose to go out and buy some gear on my own dime. This is not district equipment. This is my own. I wanted it to be portable, and I wanted to be able to have at least 3 microphone channels. Myself as the host and 1 or 2 guests. Now, more people can be on there if you have 3 microphones, and you can share them. But this was my basic setup. I chose a professional grade microphone. This is not a studio microphone. This is not something you'd find in a fine music recording studio, but you don't need that. But what this is a very solid, rugged, workmanlike vocal microphone. You've probably seen these before on stages everywhere in music concerts around the world. It's a great microphone. It's one of the standard industry mics. I have 3 of those, along with 3 stands, so that when we're sitting at a table, everyone can have a microphone stand and get the microphone up close to their mouth. Everyone has a pair of headphones, and I do have a headphone amplifier, similar to the one that I showed before. But the star of my show isn't a computer. It's a digital recorder. This is a beautiful little recorder. And I say little. It's about 5 inches long by about 3 inches deep. It is a fantastic, in this case, semi-professional recorder. Records it onto a digital card. I can have 3 microphones, and it does the mixing right here. I can set my levels. I can do all of that, all from this one device. I don't have to fiddle with anything else. When I'm done with the session, I take the computer card out of the back of the recorder. I take it to my computer for editing. It works great. And this is the setup that I've used for all of the sessions that you've heard on Grand Canyon Echoes. Okay, we've decided what kind of podcast we have. We've decided perhaps who our audience is. We've come up with a way to do the actual recording. Now what? What do I do with the recording? Well, just about every kind of media that gets produced, whether it's audio, visual, virtual reality, cinematographic movies, everything requires some degree of editing. And podcast audio is no different. Even if that editing is something as simple as trimming the beginning, trimming the end so there isn't dead space. But I found that when I'm editing, I usually want to clean up the sound sometimes. I want to take out oopses that happen during the middle of the session where someone misspoke or stumbled over their words and started over. All of that can be cleaned up in the audio editing. I'm going to show you two software. One of them is called Audacity. I will give you full disclosure. I have not used Audacity because I already had an editor. But if you will look there at that bottom line, Audacity is used by half of all podcasters. Let me say that again. Here's a piece of free software that works on Windows, Mac, Linux. It's open source. It's free to the community. And not just free for a month and then they start charging you. It's free. And it works so well, it's in use by half of the podcasters in the country, maybe in the world. That's a pretty good endorsement. The second most commonly used, with about 30% of podcasters, is Adobe Audition. This is the one that I have. I already owned it. I'm already paying for it because of all the video work I do. So I already had this one. This is a professional grade audio editor. You can edit, mix. I can even use this to record my original using a microphone on my computer. And if it's great at restoring audio that needs some kind of repair, maybe there's some special noise that you want to get rid of. Maybe there's a loud hum in the background from a machine. This can fix a lot of that. It's made for Windows or Mac. The kicker is it's not free, and it's not even cheap. It's $21 a month. It's one of the products available to you on the Adobe Creative Cloud. And if you've ever looked into that, you will find that all of the Adobe products are now done through the Creative Cloud, whether that's Adobe Acrobat, whether it's Premiere Pro, the video editor, whether it's Photoshop. All of those are part of Creative Cloud. So you pay for high quality and you pay quite a bit. Now, for me, it's worth it because of the amount of work I do. For you, if $21 a month is too steep, you've got that option of going to Audacity. You've got your message. You've got your audience. You've done your recording. You've edited it down to a fine edge. What do you do now? How do you get this out on the world? How do you get your great message onto the internet where people can find it, download it, and listen to it? Well, that's where you come in. You need a host. And just like everything else during this webinar, there are a lot of choices. Just as there are choices of microphones and choices of computer interfaces and choices for editors, there are choices for the hosting service. Now, if you're not familiar with that phrase, hosting, this is no different than getting an email provider. In order to send emails, you have to have some kind of company. Maybe it's Gmail, Google. Maybe it's America Online. I think there's still a few people using that. Maybe it's Yahoo, but you needed a provider. Your internet service in itself needs a internet service provider, an ISP they call it. I'm using Cox Communications. You might be using something different. This is no different. Podcasts hosts are a way to get your content into the internet world. This is three of a potentially very long list of hosts. This particular website that I include down there for your future reference had three that it shows as best in certain categories. The first one is Buzzsprout. I've not used it, but it claims to be the best podcast for beginners. And what I think that means is it's easy to use. There aren't too many choices for you to make. It's really simple. It's got a simple interface. They have a free plan as well as some paid plans. And like any free plan, the normal free plan is, yeah, it's free, but there are limitations. I don't know what the limitations are, and you may find them to be too constrictive. But the nice thing about it is you can try it for free. Podbean.com is the best for unlimited storage and bandwidth. It's also relatively inexpensive. If you pay for a whole year at once, it's only $9 a month. And this is the very host that we use for the District Grand Canyon Echoes podcast. It's stable, it works, the interface is not too complicated, it does what we need, and it does the job. The third one on the list is another one that I'm not familiar with personally, Blueberry, and that's not a misspelling, it's Blubrry. This one apparently is best because it has quite a selection of advanced features. So if you've already learned the basics and you're ready to advance, you might consider one like Blueberry as an advanced set of features. What those advanced features are, I did not go study, but I think you can imagine any number of complexities to do with your content that might benefit from having some advanced features. And maybe they're advanced features including ease of upload and so forth. This one is also not free. They don't have a free option, and it starts at $12 a month. These are just 3, and there are probably 30 or 40 out there. These are great places to start, and you can follow that link at the bottom later. These slides will be made available when we put this up on YouTube, so you'll be able to get the benefit of all of these links that I'm putting in. And just so you know, here's the Grand Canyon Echoes, podbean.com. Here's what it looks like when you go to our site directly. You will see that it has some episodes in the middle. We have 33 episodes. The last 5 episodes were actually a user-submitted thing by Trish Blackwelder. She was fulfilling her Pathways requirement for having a podcast. So she piggybacked on the District podcast. And if you know anyone who wants to do that, we'd be happy to accommodate that. Most of the 33 episodes, though, are unique personal episodes where we interviewed somebody. I interviewed Toastmasters from all around the district for all kinds of reasons with all kinds of backgrounds. It's a fun project for me. And as you can see, it's a pretty simple interface. We've had over 1,300 downloads in the short time we were active. I say short time we were active because this last year during the pandemic, we have not been very active for the reasons that you might imagine. My chosen method was to interview people in person. And I felt that was a powerful way to get messages across, was to be eyeball to eyeball as we talk about their issue. Well, since we couldn't meet in person, we stopped doing the episodes. That's going to change. We're going to get it geared back up again. You'll start seeing more content. By the way, the different hosts will have different interfaces. Even Podbean has different looks that you can apply. It's like a lot of website builders. You can have different color schemes, different places where the icons sit on the screen and so forth. Choose one that works for you. We covered a lot of territory in a short time. We talked about what is a podcast and who's listening to them. We mentioned the various kinds of podcasts, and I hope that as I'd explained these and talked about the demographics of the people who are listening, you got some ideas for what kind of podcast you think you'd like to have. And this podcast, by the way, could be Toastmaster related. I hope it is, but it doesn't have to be. You can have your own. You might want a podcast for your business. You might want a podcast for another group that you're a member of. and you just might want to have a podcast for having fun and sharing great ideas with people. We talked briefly about equipment, from a very simple concept of using a Zoom session all the way up to my rather expensive fancy recorder. We talked about 2 different editors, one free and one not free, both high quality, used by over 80% of podcasters everywhere. And finally, we talked about 3 different hosting services with ideas for finding out more information about them. Here's my email address. This will be in the show notes as well. If you have any questions about podcasts, why did I choose the equipment that I chose? How much did all that equipment cost? Why didn't I do this on the podcast that we did on Grand Canyon Echoes? I'm willing to take critical comment. We are Toastmasters, and we're good at taking and giving evaluation. At this time, I'll ask, are there any questions?
Well done. I'm not seeing any questions so far, but I will tell you, when you said something earlier, the funniest thing popped in my head about the theatrical, the story of the War of the Worlds. And that is how much power just the spoken word has. So if anyone, theatrical's a little silly, War of the Worlds was a story read on the radio, and apparently it terrified a lot of people.
Yeah, for the young ones in the crowd, she's talking about the Orson Welles 1939 Halloween special, Martians landing in New Jersey. And it was so well done that it fooled millions of people into thinking it was a real invasion. That was, of course, a big professional production, and you may not have that in mind. But you and your friends may want to put on a skit. You may want to do some fun things. You might be a budding comedian and want to just try out some of your act. There's so many ways you can use a podcast to express yourself. And again, what's the value of a podcast compared to other medium? It's portable. People listen to it on their phone or on their computer. They don't have to be watching a screen. They don't have to go to a movie theater. They don't have to go to a concert. They can just listen to it wherever they are.
I absolutely love that, Don. I know my kids, they listen to podcasts as well. On my podcast reading list, we have things like Bill Nye, the science guy. He has a podcast.
Of course he does.
So it is a very creative opportunity for you to share your story, share your skills, interview people. Some of the best podcasts I've heard have been interviews. They're a lot of fun. Are there questions from the audience? We would love to pick Don's brains. I mean, he is sat right here virtually with us, and a fountain of knowledge. All right, I have a question for you. Okay. If you're just starting a podcast, how many episodes would you recommend you have lined up before you launch?
I don't think there's a magic answer to that, but I would say have 3 or 4, maybe 6. The reason for that is if you only have 1 or 2 and someone finds it and they listen to it and they like it, they're going to be a little disappointed. It also, it's kind of like going to a club website where there's no content, or you look at the last date that website was updated and it was 3 years ago. It makes you wonder about the commitment of the person putting that website, or in this case, the commitment of a podcast. When we did the district podcast, I had some ready to go sessions that actually had been recorded by someone else on our behalf. This was Karen Nowicki, who had she set up her podcast at one of our conferences 2 or 3 years ago, and she gave us permission. She was very gracious about it, said, absolutely, you can copy those and put your own label on it, and you don't even need to give me credit. But of course we did. And we had 5 or 6 to give us some seed material. So 4, 5, 6, I think would be a good number. Sure.
That is a great answer. Thank you so much. We do have some questions. Our first one comes from Jared. Do you script out your podcast, and how long does it take you to prepare?
That's a good question, Jared. And the answer is no, I don't generally. I have had, of those 30 some odd sessions we did, only one of those sessions, the guest had some questions laid out ahead of time. And I followed that list, and we covered it that way. Most of the time, I give the guest a general idea of what I want to talk about. And it's very open in these early episodes. It's, tell us about your first Toastmaster experience. Tell us how Toastmasters has changed your life. What kind of opportunities have been made available to you because of your involvement in Toastmasters? If it was a Toastmaster who went on into leadership, I talked about their leadership journey and where did they go after their club and area and division and district and so forth. So it's not scripted, and maybe that's a reflection of the same way I prepare my speeches. My speeches are prepared, but I never write them down. I know some people think that's odd, and some people say, I can't do that. I've tried to do it. But in this case, most of the time, I do not script it out heavily. I have an outline that I have in my own mind. Every once in a while, in fact, I've got someone online on the hook who said he's willing to do one, but he'd like me to give him a few of the talking points beforehand. And that's great. He wants to prepare, and I can do that. I hope that answers your question, Jared.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to go right into the next one. This one's from Jennifer. Jennifer asks, do you recommend we start with pre-recorded podcasts as beginners?
Is this some other content that you've discovered that you want to repost? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
I am watching for the response. I am going to take a guess at what may be meant. I have actually seen it where some business owners will do something like a Facebook Live.
Okay.
Where they go live video and then they take the audio from that and repurpose it into a podcast.
Okay, let's run with that then. That's a great idea as long as you have permission of those original speakers. If it's in a business setting and it's someone you're in the company and one of your company leaders has done that sort of recording and you want to repackage it, repurpose it as a podcast, great. If it's somebody else's material, you will want to make sure that you get permission. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but basically it's as simple sometimes as asking, is it okay if I share this in this podcast? But that has the advantage of you don't have to worry about the production parts of it, of coming up with a way to record and editing and so forth. That's a powerful way to get a toehold on that channel. And then you see what kind of response you get, and that can help guide you when you finally get to the point of generating some original content. So yes, that's a great way to get started.
Well, Jennifer responded while you were explaining that, and it was very similar to what I was guessing at. Jennifer says, mainly I have done live video, but I have felt I've had too many mistakes. So I was wondering if pre-recording would be better. So,
yeah, okay. That's actually one of the really great things about editing audio. So much easier than video, because if you make an edit in video, the picture moves and you can tell that you made a cut, and you have to do things. There's tricks to make sure that the viewer doesn't notice that you edited something out. On audio, nobody will ever know. So if you made some mistakes, you can cut out the mistake, splice the pieces back together digitally, and no one will even realize that those verbal cues were off. So yes, definitely, if you've got some video content and it's not relying on an image, so if the video content was heavily visual, that is, you had pictures and diagrams and things that would be difficult to explain or were self-explanatory by the image, then that might not be a good choice. But if it was just you talking, yeah, we in fact did that for the trio in the early last year during the pandemic. One of the few things we did, the trio did a message on Zoom, and we published that on YouTube as a video message. And then I packaged it up and edited it as an audio file and put it up on Podbean as part of our Grand Canyon Echoes. So that's a great idea if you've already got some of that material. But your goal should be to get to a point where you're generating some original audio content as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jared has another amazing question. It's actually a couple of questions built in, and he says, yes, you did answer his first question very well. How do you select the individuals that you have interviewed? And then how do you reach out to them and schedule?
Well, sometimes it's people I already know and I know how to contact them. Other times it's recommended to me. People I know, Toastmasters I know, say, hey, have you met so-and-so? They would be a great person to have on your podcast. They've got a great story. Often it's people I've met for the first time, maybe at a conference or during a speech contest. I saw them and I approached them at the contest and said, would you be willing to do that for me, to do a podcast about that? Sometimes it's people I know. It's other times people are nominated to me. And what I definitely want the incoming trio to help me with is to put the word out, maybe on Facebook, maybe on the website, that we are seeking people who are interested in being recorded and being interviewed. Or they may not be interested in an interview. They have something they want to say, maybe in a monologue style. As long as it's Toastmasters related, I'm willing to go with that. So, Jared, that's a great question. And it's one that will help us, if we can get more perspectives, not just people I know, but more perspectives from folks that I've met or will meet as a part of this process. That'll make for a stronger, more vital podcast.
Those are amazing ideas there. And I especially like that people are being recommended to you.
Yeah.
To add a personal point, I get featured on a lot of podcasts because of my business. And the way they find me is on social media. There are a lot of Facebook groups about podcasters, which are find guest, be a guest, find a guest. There are websites where you would put your one sheet, your bio up, and people email and say, you're a fit for my podcast. Would you come on board?
Yeah.
It's quite easy.
Yeah. If you were at conference or saw the video online afterwards, Stacy Brookman did a educational session on taking your business to the next level. And a lot of what she talked about was in the podcasting world of using podcasts to promote your business and getting invited to be on podcasts and vice versa. So check that one out too. It'll give you some extra perspectives on that.
And that one is already up on our YouTube channel, Don?
Yes, it is. Yeah, fairly recent. I think I forget the exact, I'm not sure the exact title. I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me, but it's something like taking your talk to the next stage, something like that.
Hey, fantastic. Do we have any other questions for the evening? Well, Don, while we wait to see if any more questions pop up, I want to personally thank you for doing this conversation tonight, because it was a conversation. It wasn't just a presentation. I love how you showcase everything and give us this real friendly, easy to follow system. You have made it very believable that anyone could be a podcaster. that it is possible for anyone to give this a shot and be successful with a lot of great information. I have another question that popped up. See, I knew if I staged out long enough, someone else would be popping a question in. Jared, some of my favorite podcasters use both audio and video of their interviews. The video goes to YouTube and the other to iTunes. How would you edit the audio for both? Use the district example.
I tell you what, Jared, that's a great idea. It's a fascinating question. What I chose to do early on for the podcast was not to make it too complicated. And adding video does complicate it. I have done a lot of video for the district. And I was adding it up this year since July 1st of 2020. We've put up 150 some odd videos on YouTube. That's due to the efforts of people like Karen and David and all of the small business expos and impact events and all of the speech contests. So much content coming out of our members. And I've gotten very adept at doing videos. I haven't really explored, to be honest with you, merging the video with the podcast idea, except for that one time. And that was just a straight, take the Zoom broadcast video, the recording, just strip the audio out, publish it on a podcast. But I'm intrigued now by your question, and I'm going to start thinking about ideas on that. If you've got ideas on ways to shape that, please reach out to me. You've got my email address, and I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, Jared's making me think that. Just think of all those YouTube hours that you've put up. How many of those can you just strip the audio and create? You've just got another 100 hours of podcast hours.
And another question popping up.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I will. Jared's saying thank you so much. I think you have a volunteer to help you with this podcast journey.
Yeah.
Or at least with ideas.
Yeah. What I don't want to do is just do it mechanically. It may make sense to take any number of those videos and just do a straight audio pullout. But it may lose something. And I want to make sure that we're not going to lose anything without the video portion. And that's a matter of curating all of that stack of videos that we do have and the ones from prior years as well. But you're right, that does give us a lot of potential.
Absolutely. Well, Don, I thank you so much for your time tonight. This has been a very informative, fun, and exciting presentation. You've definitely shown us what is capable, and I am excited to see what comes from Grand Canyon Echoes in the next upcoming year. I have a feeling you got a few ideas and you've got a few thoughts on what's going to happen. Yes. And I'm also excited to see how many other people decide to put together a podcast themselves, or even guest. I'll give a special section of podcasts to you.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The future is looking very bright in the podcast world. So thank you so much, Don. It has been greatly appreciated.
And one last thing before I go, this slide deck is available to you. You've got my email showing on the screen. Just send me an email and say, Don, I'd like a copy of your slide deck so I don't have to try to read my scribbled notes and those long web addresses. And I'd be happy to send it to you.
And that is a very appreciated thing. Thank you so much, Don. And thank you to everyone who attended tonight and asked questions. We appreciate you being here. And I'm excited to see what you do from this. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much.